After 2 millennia, the Colosseum is still Rome's crown jewel. In its heyday, it stood at the heart of an empire that had an obsession with death. What was it like to watch the brutal sport playing out on the arena floor? Unsolved History will move beyond the cliches and step into the virtual Colosseum.
Well, you know, Bernie, 2,000 years ago, we would have had tickets that matched the numbers of the doorway, but we haven't put the numbers in yet.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I forgot the tickets at home. But let's go on inside. I think we can still make our way to the best seats. This part of the building was reserved for the senators.
Yeah, it's pretty dark in this corridor. We're about 60 or 70 feet into the building.
Yeah, the only daylight's coming from the seats. Well, let's go up and take a look and see what kind of view the senators had. Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah, you can actually see the gladiator figures down there. You can see them pretty clearly from this point.
Yeah, we'd be even closer if we were sitting down there with the emperor and top state officials.
But up in the cheap seats, it's a different story.
Well, Dean, we've come up to a part of the building that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, we had to recreate this from just traces of the stair and the existing outer wall and examples from other Roman buildings. This is where the lowest of Roman society would sit, and if you look down there, you know, they were probably watching more of the large game action and things rather than the individual combat, and of course partying with their neighbors.
Walking around this virtual building brings home the scale of the Colosseum, and not always how big it is. In fact, some parts are surprisingly small.
Here we are in the smallest and narrowest corridor in the entire Colosseum.
But it's even worse than you might consider because of the fact that everyone in the upper levels had to exit through this corridor. So it was quite a jam in here.
The idea that's held by most architectural historians is that it's this kind of paradigm of circulation and crowd control. When you look at that passage and you actually use the model to go inside and experience it, you realize that it's actually a much more complex system than that.
Most classical scholars claim that the Colosseum could be emptied in just 5 minutes. The virtual Colosseum has shown that to be wrong. But was this dingy upper corridor a case of poor design, or something more ingenious?
Maybe it's some sort of a filter that would keep them from emptying into the lower levels and would allow the upper classes to clear out before the lower classes did. So in that sense, it's rather than just optimizing circulation, it's sort of controlling it and tweaking it in a very sophisticated way.
That such a finely tuned building could be created without the use of sophisticated design software stuns modern stadium designers.
You can walk into any arena, any stadium in this country alone, and I think internationally as well, and you'll see the similarities of the designs of the various vomitories, how they were doing people moving in those days, how they got people to the upper levels of seats, how they got them to the bottom levels of seats. The Colosseum is the mother of all arenas.
Just as our stadiums have their corporate suites and celebrity courtside seats, so too was the Colosseum segregated according to social standing.
The whole of Roman society was present in the Colosseum, all properly arranged according to their status in the society. So at the bottom on the south axis, right up against the arena, you had the emperor. That was the prime viewing position. And around him would have been the Senate, because they were the most important order in society. Behind them, the equestrian order, who were also one of the upper classes.
Next came the freemen, and in the very top section, sitting most likely on wooden seats, were freeborn women and slaves. Unsolved History has shown how the Colosseum worked from the ground up. But there's another side to the Colosseum, an underside. Below the arena floor is a maze of corridors 18 feet deep. It's called the Hypogeum, and it was the underground nerve center of the Colosseum's awe-inspiring stage shows.
Now, Daniel, you have to imagine it would have been completely dark down here, just lit with flares, all smelly and smoky.
Because of the arena floor above.
Well, not only that, there was a second story down here.
I see.
Yes, look at that arch. That would have supported another floor, so there
Right.
were actually 2 floors down here.
Amazingly, the 2 levels of the Hypogeum were linked to the arena floor above by a system of human-powered elevators.
And look, just look at that. That's for a winch
Oh, they would turn it.
Yes, yes. And
That
it
would
would
help
have...
raise an elevator?
Yes, and here on the left we can see a very good example of an elevator. You can see the grooves. Look at the middle groove there. That's where the
Right.
elevator would have fitted.
And the counterweights would have slid down this, possibly.
Yes, on both sides, actually. You can see the other slot on that side.
During a spectacle, stagehands under the arena floor would work to pull off stunts that defied the imagination of the crowd above, like making a ferocious lion appear from nowhere, or making dozens of them materialize at once.
The trapdoors would pop open and then in would leap some poor terrified creature, some exotic animal from the furthest reaches of the empire. It must have seemed as though it was magic.
But these tricks pale compared with the tale of the most magical stunt ever performed here. It's the story of a naumachia, a naval battle staged in the Colosseum. And it was told by a poet named Martial in 80 AD.
He talks about the miracle of a visitor to the arena arriving rather late and finding that instead of land in the arena there was sea.
Historians agree that the Romans reenacted great naval battles, but what evidence is there that they tried it in the Colosseum? Deep down below the amphitheater, in one of the drains intended for channeling away rainwater, unsolved history found tantalizing evidence of massive flooding.
I'm in the center of this tunnel, and as I work my way down, I start to see artifacts on the higher levels. Normally, the water would flow right through here on its way out, but debris up here could only be here if there was a great flood of water coming through or a naumachia. And if that's the case, then the debris and mud is caked up here. And look at this. Look what's sticking out. All along here are pieces of what looks like shards and pottery, but this is bone with teeth in it.
Were the Romans actually capable of pulling off this stunning feat of engineering? Unsolved History's team of archaeological experts is about to look for harder evidence. Evidence that must still lie somewhere in the ruins of this ancient building.